I'm not here to convince you to hire me. I'm here to have a conversation to uncover if working together is going to be the right fit. This is another genuine tactic that establishes trust and differentiates us from other agencies. The other scenario, though, which unfortunately might be a little more common, is this mindset is never going to change.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenly, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today we've got a phenomenal interview ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open up for Q&A, and other days you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. Now, as a reminder, if you love the content we share here on the show, make sure that you subscribe for more. All right, today we have the fourth of 5 interviews with the best BizDev practitioners in the game as part of our August series on all things business development. Today's topic is one that's going to really resonate with a lot of our solo recruiters here running their own agency, as well as those who work with a founder or leadership who have an incredible story to tell as we unpack the power of founder-led marketing and founder-led sales. So what is it? How does it work? Why does it matter? How does it help your company? All this and more with today's guest, Megan Bowen, CEO at Refine Labs, the leading B2B demand generation agency. So pull out your pen and paper. You're going to want to take notes. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Love this topic. Really excited to get into it today and get specific for everyone that's listening. So hopefully they get some good takeaways from this conversation.
Yes. And I feel like I was spoiled because you and I got to work together for a couple of years and I got to watch you and Chris just lead from the front with this whole philosophy of founder-led sales, founder-led marketing, what it can do for a business. But before we get into that part, I think it's important to add a little bit of context about your background specifically and why I think that you have done so well with it. So prior to Refine Labs, one, you weren't a B2B marketer. When that's exactly what your company does, that's exactly who you all sell to. So how did you go about navigating the new services that you all were selling and understanding what it is that the people that you sell to, your ICP, care about?
Yeah, it's true. So I like to say I grew up in the New York City startup scene and really, I was COO, at startups and I oversaw lots of functions, but really what I kind of grew up doing was actually sales, account management, customer success. That was really the core focus of a lot of my earlier roles in the earlier part of my career. And so really seeing business through the lens of the customer and really honing my sales skills, both in direct sales role, but also in account management where you're renewing and expanding customers. And so, I mean, yeah, when Chris first approached me to team up with him, I was like, I'm not a marketer. Go find someone else to to run your agency with. And he had explained I actually think your point of view relative to how you look at all business functions through the customer and just the set of skills that you bring to the table are so crucial. A lot of the intricacies of B2B marketing you'll be able to pick up no problem, but I appreciate the perspective that you come to the table with, which is maybe a bit closer to the customer, given the nature of the roles that I had. So it made a lot of sense to me, and we decided to team up and join. But yeah, I remember when sort of August 2020 is when I sort of formally joined the company. He actually had me start selling week 1. I think I closed my first deal week 3, which I also then delivered what I sold to this customer, which was actually not unlike this, training this person to really build a presence on LinkedIn and podcasting. And yeah, it took, I think, really about 6 months when I first joined to really spend a ton of time on the front lines with the B2B marketers and experts on our team, and was really able to, dedicate a lot of time, but really close the gaps that I had on more specific B2B marketing strategies and tactics. And I think my experience coupled with my crash course, and I like to say now I'm a marketer by association, I think it was a good way to really round out the overall skill set.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, probably actually really rely still on more of my sales and customer success background and skill set, even more than some of the marketing stuff, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I believe it, and I've seen it, and I think it's so interesting how you say that because you mentioned it took you 6 months to really get comfortable with it, but you were selling, as you said, from week one. That didn't change, but that probably made some of the sales conversations easier. But you already had the skills, the knowledge, the frameworks that you leverage from those years of just how do you work with people, how do you develop relationships, how do you maintain relationships that carried you through that. So it became easier over time, but yeah, I like that it was all honed in on just those original lessons that you had learned from those first roles. So want to get into, all right, founder-led sales, founder-led marketing. If you're on LinkedIn, people talk about these all the time, but most people, especially recruiters, aren't always following like B2B marketing, B2B sales, LinkedIn world. So let's just kind of overview real quick. Like from your point of view, how would you define founder-led sales and founder-led marketing?
Yeah. So founder led sales to me is um, acquiring customers without really having a repeatable sales process, a clear offer, a full clarity on, maybe who your ideal customer is and exactly what we'll do. I think founder led sales is it's a really difficult skill because basically you're in this 0 to 1 or 0 to 2 phase where you need to start acquiring customers, maybe when you don't have everything fully figured out. And that could be because you're starting brand new. That could be because there's like major market shifts and dynamics where the things that worked for you yesterday no longer work and you have to go back to the drawing board and make some adjustments. And so founder led sales, I think, is for those people that are so close, so passionate to the problem and the solution that they are able to navigate a lot of the ambiguity and still drive sales as a
Mm-hmm.
result. And ultimately, not only drive sales, but really align with what the customer needs and deliver on it, right? Because you don't want to just be selling for the sake of selling. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it is really challenging. And there's a lot of talk about how founders want to hire their first head of sales and offload that responsibility. But the timing of that is crucial. How you handle that transition is crucial. So many people mess that up, and
Mm-hmm.
it can really impact acquisition and continuing to hit sales targets. We can save
Oh
that deep
yeah.
dive for later in the conversation, but that's how I would define founder led
The
sales.
sales side of it. Okay. Yeah, I'm excited to get in that part of the conversation. Now, on the flip side of it, founder led marketing, sales marketing, these sound kind of similar, but they're actually a good bit different. So, on the founder led
Mhm.
marketing side, how do you think about that?
So I think the way I would define founder led marketing is, as the founder, you effectively become like the chief evangelist for your company. You become the face of your company. So there's a lot of ways that you could do this, but the if I sort of explain the highest level definition of this, I think it would be you as the founder are creating content that speaks about the problem you solve, the category you're in, how to solve that problem, lessons that you've learned, and then you are effectively distributing that content to your audience, your target market, right? And through that process of the content creation and distribution, you are bringing awareness to your space, your brand, your product, your service, and you are positioning yourself and your company as the leading expert in whatever it is, right? And again, there's lots of ways you can do that, but that's the crux of it, of what I think successful founder led marketing is. And when executed well, can it could be the way that you drive inbound demand for your services and grow your business.
Especially on the services side, I mean, we've seen it at Refined Labs and with other places. It's different when you have software and when you have services. When you have software, you're marketing the software, what it does, the features, the use cases. But with services, you are the product at the end of the day. What you got up here in your noggin, that is what you're effectively selling, or what your team's capabilities are there. So how you do this from a marketing standpoint and talking about the problems with the solutions, it's what you're able to share with that marketing is giving the market a glimpse of like what it would be like to work with you, to use the product. And that's why I think it's so unique, and not enough services based companies, especially recruiters, capitalize on this opportunity. They're just fighting the wrong fight of, I'm the best recruiter, I'm the cheapest recruiter, I have the most jobs, whatever, to like, not am I going to say I'm the best? Let me show you. Here's an example I've gone through how I fixed this scenario. Here is a job I just placed, the ways that I took to go about doing it, and really showing that. Because you can only do that in services if you have the experience. Like, yeah, I guess you could have ChatGPT write something, but people are going to find you out pretty quick if you didn't actually do it. So, yeah, I like that you called that out, especially from what it tees you up to do in the long term. And so you still are heavily involved in the sales process at Refine, but you're also leading with this founder-led marketing. So tell me a little bit about how what you're doing on the marketing side impacts what you see when people do, whether they're coming inbound to you and saying, hey, I want to work with you all, or if you go out and do start prospecting, like what's that doing in terms of the ability for them to like recognize you, the sales process itself, and the future conversations that come from it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, the founder-led marketing playbook that we've really adopted at Refine Labs, when you think about that content production and distribution framework overall, we index on the creation of content through video, and we'll typically publish that via podcast, YouTube, take excerpts, and then distribute and publish them on LinkedIn, where every B2B marketer in sales spends a ton of their time, which is our target market. And so, that's the tactics that we deploy for that overall strategy. Our founder, Chris Walker, really led the charge initially. And even though I'm now the CEO, he is still continuing that evangelism. And we are still seeing the benefit from that, which is amazing. My personal content strategy has also evolved as well from when I first joined, and from being a COO and then being a CEO. And what I've found, from the beginning until now, even though maybe the types of content that I've posted has evolved and changed a little bit, there's so many benefits. So number one, it's like recognition. People, every sales call that I get on today, people are like, "Oh my God, it's so fun to meet you. Like, I used to go to Demand Gen Live, or I've listened to all this, the old State of Demand Gen podcasts, or I just heard your thing on stacking growth. And, been following you on LinkedIn for years." And so there's this sense of like familiarity and recognition where, without doing anything, this person has a sense of trust with me immediately,
Yep.
right? um, then there's that credibility and expertise. It's funny, a lot of the sales calls I have might not result in a sale, and they'll say like, "Wow, thank you for spending so much time with me. I really feel like this was like marketing therapy. Like, maybe it doesn't make sense for me to hire Refine Labs, but wow, you helped me talk out this problem, or you let me know now's not the right time for us to work together, but this is what I need to be prioritizing and focusing on in my particular business." And I think, even though that maybe I lose that particular deal in the moment, this person now views me as credible, an expert. When things change or they go to a different company, they're going to come back, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
happened over. I have so many people I've talked to in 2020 and 2021 who resurface 2 years later, right? And are ready to buy or ready to revisit a conversation. So that trust, the expertise, the credibility, um, and I think the they come to the call and they know what we do. They know what our philosophy is. Um, they, they're, oh, we need to make the shift from lead gen to demand gen. And you guys are definitely the company that is going to help us figure out how to do that, right? They are restating your content back to you because they have internalized your point of view and it resonated with them. And they almost effectively are selling themselves
Mm-hmm.
on buying, right? And typically, in a standard sales process or in an outbound motion, if you're not doing that, you're starting way behind, and you have to build the trust. You have to build the credibility. You have to explain what you do, right? So it's quite powerful to come to a first call and have a level of trust, have a level of credibility established, and have a level of familiarity and knowledge with what your company does and the value that you can provide. And that has a huge impact on how fast the sales process goes, the quality of the conversation, because you can kind of skip over a bunch of stuff because you're already ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, I think, some of the biggest positive impacts when you combine both of them, right? And that's the other thing that's interesting. Like, I'm doing the marketing and the selling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even with Chris, because him and I produce so much content together, people publicly view us as a team, right? So even if, oh, I've been following Chris for years, but I know that you guys have been working together for years, I like get that transference of credibility
Yeah.
as well in those situations. So, I mean, yeah, the benefits are clear, and I think those are the most impactful ones.
Mm-hmm. And everyone's listening or watching this is like, that sounds terrible. Why would I ever want to do that? That's, who would do that? Yeah, it's a no-brainer. And it's so funny, especially that first one with familiarity and trust. When I first started talking about this podcast with Matt, I was just like, because he still does our founder-led sales also, I was saying, give it 6 months and you're going to start having people come in and they're going to say, I feel like I already know you. I feel like I've sat across the board table, coffee table, something from you. And the conversation is just going to have a different tone. And I couldn't tell you the date. It wasn't exactly 6 months on the nose. It may have been a little bit before or after, but he came back and he's just like, you were right about the podcast. I've noticed the difference and it works. And he's like, I'm so glad you pushed us to do it. So if anyone doesn't believe you for whatever reason, which they absolutely shouldn't, this does work when you do it well. So yeah, familiarity and trust, credibility and expertise. I really like how you're talking about that philosophical alignment. And what that does well, especially with, Refine Labs as champion, you're not playing the we're better than all the other marketing agencies in the world. And recruiters are in the same space. There's countless agencies you could choose from, but you have a unique point of view and you win on why you're different, not trying to be that little bit better. So one thing I know you and I hadn't been planning on talking about, but I want to get into this a little bit more, is you were talking about sometimes you'll turn away prospects that come to you because they aren't ready. It's not the right time, might not be the right fit. But tell me a little bit about why you do this and the benefit of it long term to taking this approach.
Yeah, and I think it actually really, the why is anchored in our differentiation. And so when I'm speaking with someone, and for example, I'll give you a couple scenarios. Maybe there's a scenario where they actually are very philosophically aligned. They buy into the premise, but maybe they're just way too early. And as I dig into the stage of the company and what's working and not, and the challenges that they're having, it becomes really evident that the number one priority for that company isn't demand gen, but something more fundamental in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you haven't really nailed your ICP. You really need to focus on your strategic narrative. You really need to prioritize product marketing initiatives relative to positioning and pricing. And so when I recognize that there's a critical missing piece that they need to prioritize before they invest in demand gen, I will politely point that out and say, look, like, you know, yeah, you could buy our stuff and we could help you and we probably would drive some results, but really the best thing for your business is to get this and this figured out first, and then call me back in 3 months
Mm-hmm.
and let's revisit the conversation, or call me back in 6 months or a year, whatever the time frame is. And so one thing that I actually say this on my sales calls is, I'm not here to convince you to hire me. I'm here to have a conversation to uncover if working together is going to be the right fit. This is another genuine tactic that establishes trust,
Mm-hmm.
and differentiates us from other agencies. And so I think that that's one. one flavor of it. The other flavor might be, longtime follower of Refine Labs, director of marketing. They're super aligned. And then they begin to lay out the situation that they're in where leadership really only cares about volume of MQLs or directly attributable pipeline to marketing investments. And it becomes really clear and evident that, okay, we have this champion, but all of the senior decision makers are so far apart and not philosophically aligned that if we don't address that before we get started, it's going to impact our ability to be successful. And so in some cases, I would say if I see that, I will call it out. I've had a few instances where it's been like, okay, let's bring these senior leaders into the sales process. Let's discuss this. Let's educate them. Let's see if they're open minded to shifting their perspective. And if we can overcome that obstacle together, let's get started. The other scenario, though, which unfortunately might be a little more common, is this mindset is never going to change. And we would be setting ourselves up for a difficult partnership that likely wouldn't yield the results if we're going to be constantly fighting against a mindset that is just not aligned with how we want to execute marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are like, I think, two real concrete examples of why we would, walk away from a deal or recommend that the partnership isn't the right fit. And when you run a services business, it's really key. I know that, we're talking a lot about recruiters and recruiting agencies. And what I would offer is, I tell people like, hey, if you want 1,000 MQLs, go hire a different agency. They're going to help you with that. Right. If you want to pay an agency to run paid ads when you really probably shouldn't do it quite yet, find another agency that'll take your money and do that. But that's not what we're about, right? Like, we're about driving business results and partnering with the companies at the right time with the right team where we have really high confidence that we're going to be successful. And when you think about a commodity space or a crowded space with competitors, as a recruiter or recruiting agency, how are you differentiating? And differentiating on things like that can be really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily just how you recruit your candidate pool, whatever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's that there's a little level of exclusivity there where you're only putting your team and the prospect in an opportunity where we're only going to take this on if we'll be successful. Because especially in the services, your reputation is what people are buying at the end of the day. And so if you have a reputation for taking any job that comes, you produce mediocre results, like that's how you're going to be perceived. But if you turn away opportunities where you know you won't be doing as great as you could and only take on the ones where you're just like, you blow it out of the water, every customer is a raving fan about you as a result, that's what the market is only going to hear. And that becomes this flywheel that's going to help you drive more and more business over time. So you almost do have to play in the beginning early on and decide, like, which avenue do we want to go? Do we want to take revenue at any cost, or do we want to be selective and know, hey, it's going to be slow going for a little bit. We'll have to establish ourselves. But once we do, the market is just going to keep coming into us because they're going to know who we are, what we're about. They're going to trust us. They're going to have the word of mouth support from peers who've already done this in the space. And it makes such a difference with that. And I've seen a couple agencies who've even done that where they've turned down roles because the company says, I need this role filled in 14 days. They're like, cool, that's great. You might want to, but I only fill the role with people who I know will be a great fit for you in the long term. So if that's what you want, to your point, like there's other recruiters who can do that for you, go find them, but that's not something that I'm focused on. So there's so many different things that we can translate from what you just shared there to the recruiting space.
Yeah. And also like layer those key messages into your founder-led marketing strategy, right? Some of my most popular posts are like 5 reasons not to hire Refine Labs, or the 5 things that you should actually figure out before you start running paid advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the anti-sell. But really what I'm doing is I'm trying to communicate to people like, this is the right way to think about growing your business. And so then when people do come to me, and if I'm like, okay, yeah, now's the time, like, let's do this, they know I'm not just trying to sell them on something, because I'm comfortable saying the opposite when I believe it to be true.
Yeah, and putting your flag in the ground with your point of view, what makes you different. So I love those. So let's get tactical for a quick second. You mentioned that, a lot of your ICP is on LinkedIn. Recruiters They love LinkedIn too. It's a great spot to try to find candidates and potential business. So, like, what are a few tactics that you do to do this? You've spoken about, social posts on LinkedIn. You've mentioned a few podcasts. So we don't have to get super deep, but how are you going about, like, are you just jumping on podcasts to talk about certain things? Are you sharing practical advice? How are you going about this? Because I know part of it for recruiters is also like, I don't have time to do this. So
Yeah.
I want to help walk them into how you approach this.
Yeah. So, what I would say is if you're going to get started doing this for the first time, I would say here's a really easy roadmap to think about getting started for the first time. Um, we have, again, remember, as I was describing before, content production and content distribution. So you need a plan and a system to do both of those things really well, while also knowing that you have a business to run and a lot of other priorities to manage at the same time. And so, step one is, how can I dedicate at least 1 to 2 hours a week for content production, right? And that can be many different tactics. 1 to 2 hours a week to start is plenty for this. Now, you could record a long form podcast episode that you then publish to a podcast channel, YouTube, cut up micro content. You could have a live event where you invite people to that event weekly. Chris and I did that with Demand Gen Live in the early days of Refine Labs. Guess what? We did a live event. We just took that event, published it to the podcast, added clips to YouTube. We would get 5 to 15 micro video clips that would fuel social posts. And you basically have, 1 to 2 weeks worth of content by dedicating 1 to 2 hours a week of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling a little intimidated by actually committing to a podcast or committing to a live recurring event, literally just record 1 to 2 hours of content with someone on your team, right? Literally, we could just record together. You could prompt me with different questions and we could get the same output of great video content that could be repurposed for many different channels. So, those are some like very specific ways that you could get started with that content production piece. If video feels a little intimidating to start, that's fine. Spend 1 to 2 hours a week writing thoughtful content via text that you can distribute as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's video, whether it's writing, honestly, you can even just record yourself on video without even anybody helping you, too. So, a lot of people get intimidated, but when you actually break down what you really need to do, it's a couple of hours a week building great content.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about the content? What does your audience care about? What are you an expert on? What are you doing every day? Those are the things that you want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, that will create really great content. Then on the distribution side, right? So whether you have video or text, whatever content you've produced, pick the channel where your audience is spending time. Like you said, LinkedIn is great for marketers. LinkedIn is great for recruiters. It's the right channel to focus on right now. Go all in on that. Um, distribute your content, publish your content through your personal profile, upload your video, add some text copy, just post your text post on whatever topic it is. This is the other thing I tell people. There's lots of LinkedIn gurus and things like that. You don't have to post 7 days a week. Post 2 to 3 times a week. If you have a busy week and you don't get to it, that's okay. Just pick it up the next week. I'm a perfect example of an inconsistent poster, but it's still effective. I do it as often as I can. Sometimes I go through some lulls where I don't do it for a while, then I'm back up to doing it 5 days a week. They say, oh, if you don't do it every day, just don't do it at all. It's not true. Do it 2 to 3 times a week. You skip a week, it's no big deal. The consistency over a longer term period of time is what matters. The other thing that I would say is on the distribution side, it really matters who you're connected to and who is following you. Those are the people that are going to see your content. So you actually need to invest in a connection strategy. Every single day, you need to spend 10 minutes. You need to send 5 to 10 connection requests to the types of people that you want to see your content. And you should also be spending a little time finding other thought leaders in your space and engaging with their content, seeing their followers, connecting with their followers. The audience development strategy, the engagement strategy, are just as important as the content strategy itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and LinkedIn also has now made it really easy. You have some awesome top performing organic posts. Put a little bit of budget behind that and boost it to guarantee distribution to your target audience, right? Through the LinkedIn thought leadership ads.
Mm-hmm.
So just start there. And really what you're talking about is a few hours a week. Over time, you can kind of like probably like your situation with your CEO, you are an enablement function for him, right? Here's some videos, here's some things. So, as you get going, you can figure out what you can delegate or outsource to build a support system for you to maintain that content production and distribution system on an ongoing basis. I could go on, but like if I had to just break it down that simply, I'm trying to make it like actionable for
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
No, that was great. That was a masterclass. And I think the big things there are, one, like it's not as overcomplicated as you think. And two, do what's comfortable and something that's sustainable for you versus this thought leader guru hustle porn that everyone sees on LinkedIn right now
Yeah.
about
Doesn't have to be
what you
all or
need to do.
nothing.
No.
There's a huge range in between.
It's absolutely wild. And some things that I even learned from you on what I liked on the services side was, one, I wasn't a fan of being in front of a camera earlier on, but I love to write because it forces me to think and clarify my thoughts. And so what I would do was I would be working through a really tough problem that I had with a current client. Take out the client name. I bet you most other companies have a similar problem to that. So you can start to talk about things. And again, this is on the service side. How do you approach problems? How do you solve for them? What are you seeing? What's the progress? This becomes fantastic marketing material for you to go and share with other people that would potentially be working with you. So taking an approach like that, and then marrying that with, the frequency, like you said, you don't have to post every day. You don't have to post 5 times every day. I'm a big believer in the philosophy of, I'm sure everyone's been in a board meeting, a leadership meeting somewhere where there's that one person that just talks to hear their own voice. And as soon as they talk, everyone just starts to tune them out. But then there's one person that sits in the room. They'll say 2 things all meeting, but everyone is quiet as a mouse, listening to exactly what they have to say. If you post too much and it's fluff, if it's not helpful, people are going to tune you out as well. So balancing, like, how often are you posting? Are you posting just to post? Because if so, is it worth it? Are you adding value? Or are you posting because you genuinely have something to share? You think it's going to help people? Yes, do that. But there's times when I usually try to hold myself. I'd love to post 3 times a week, but sometimes midweek, I don't have anything to say. So I don't, for that exact reason. So like you said, you're going to burn yourself out. You don't have to do it every day. You're not going to get penalized by the LinkedIn or algorithm gods, wherever they may be. So just find what's comfortable for you and make a habit of that. And it's going to go a lot further than trying to force yourself into some playbook from a guru somewhere.
It's true. And you hit on another strategy here that I think is worth just talking about a little bit more, which is effectively like employee advocacy. So we did this really well early days at Refine Labs, and you, Sam, were part of this at the time, right? We spent time with our team members and basically almost did like LinkedIn training with our internal team. We're like, hey, if anyone's interested in participating, this is good for the company. It's actually also really good for you personally as you build your career and your reputation. We invested a lot in, leading by example, but helping other team members cultivate their own strategy for LinkedIn organic. And I think there was probably a time in 2021, and people say this to me, a lot, like, I remember the time when I'd open up my LinkedIn feed and it was just only people from Refine Labs talking about different things, right? And that was such a boost to the founder-led marketing strategy because it wasn't just Chris anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was everyone chiming in, sharing, and when you think about if you're, running a recruiting agency and you have a team of recruiters, like it's so cool because I remember doing sales calls. People would be like, can I work with Sam? I want to get started. Can I work with Sam? Can I work with Ashley Lewin? Right? Can I work with Allison? Can I work with Tori? They would call out the people
Mm-hmm.
that they were seeing and they wanted to work with them because of their point of view, how they express themselves. So it can be really powerful to extend that strategy to other people at the agency as well.
Mm-hmm. And I like your word choice, like extend, not force, because that was such a big part of it. It was the
Yeah.
offer. There was never any requirement, any part of the job that said if you don't do this, you'll be penalized, or have a bonus withheld, anything like that. I was always lead by example. If you want to do it, we will fully empower you to do it.
Yeah, that's
So,
key. Don't force people to post on
yeah.
LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. That was all right. I love that segment on the marketing side. So I want to move over now to the sales because you have such a good story here. And you came into Refine Labs early on. You started heavily week one getting into the sales process. But then as time went on, you started to move more into the COO role and got out of the sales process. So I'd love if you can team me up, just like walk me through that entire thing, because we definitely saw some interesting insights there and what happened with BizDev, what happened with company growth, that I want to let you just walk us through that whole, I guess it was probably a year and a half or 2 years over the course of it, and let recruiters kind of learn a thing or two from this.
Yeah. So, joined in 2020, immediately was selling with Chris. Chris and I were both selling for basically 2020 and 2021. As the company was growing, I'd say probably about a year in. So this was like summer of 2021. We were like, okay, we were growing really quickly. This was like the COVID boom was
Mm-hmm.
happening. So like there was an insane amount of VC money being injected. Every B2B SaaS company wanted to spend $1 billion on paid advertising. We were probably at the height of our sort of brand awareness peak. And so the demand for our services was out of control, and the market and just the timing, right? There's all this money that needs to be spent in advertising. And we were just really well positioned to help all those companies with that. So we ended up hiring a head of growth. Actually, MJ Smith, CMO at Colab, so such a talented marketer and seller. Come
Mm-hmm.
come to
And
find
recruiter.
out.
She's been on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. And so she came in, and eventually, I spent about 6 to 8 months basically co-selling with her to kind of get her up to speed. She was a marketer too. She didn't really have sales experience. And over the course of that time period was really able to uh help her build her sales skill set to where she was repeatedly closing deals. And so I would say probably, in the back half of 2021, I started to me and Chris both started to step out of sales a bit, and we had empowered MJ to really take that on. We had then hired another director of sales, Carl Ferreira, also amazing sales professional, and got him into the mix, and he started selling as well. We even had one of our directors of demand gen, Eric McKinnon, kind of almost become like a sales engineer and really help
Mm-hmm.
with that subject matter expertise. So between the three of them in 2022 and end of 2021 and into 2022, we really got this going. And combination of having clear customer, clear offer, one package, repeatable, clearly defined sales process, high demand in the market for what we were providing. All of those factors together, along with their talent, was really working and was driving a ton of sales. Then we have these market shifts, right? Sort of mid 2022, the back half of 2022, we have like the B2B SaaS collapse, right? All of these companies start to get in trouble, budgets cut, companies shut down, VC money is contracted, the market dynamics are changing. It's no longer about funding growth at all costs. It becomes, how do we drive efficiencies? How do we save money, right? And so what we started to notice, there was this impact on our customers directly, and then a second in order impact on Refine Labs. So our customers directly were like literally running out of money, not able to get more, needing to lay off a lot of people, needing to make budget cuts. We often were part of the budget cuts, or they would stop advertising altogether. And the demand really started to shift of what companies were prepared to do relative to paid advertising and demand gen strategies. So I really attribute this more to the market changes and shifts, and not like the talent of
Mm-hmm.
our team that was selling. But we got into this position now where what we were selling at the price point with the process, it wasn't working anymore. It wasn't working anymore. People weren't buying. It was too expensive. People were scared. People were just holding all their money and not making decisions like that. And so what we saw was a decline, like a pretty severe decline in acquisition as a result of this. And again, the team was hustling and doing everything that they could. And it became really clear as we got into 2023 that I was realizing this. Me and Chris were like, we're back to founder led sales. Like, we need to refigure out what does the market need right now? What will they buy? What do they really need? How do we reposition what we offer? How do we adjust pricing and delivery to match the current market conditions? So you don't really know the answers to those questions unless you're back in it. So immediately, Chris and I, Q1 of 23, we were like, okay, we're back in. And he was sort of focused on some newer types of projects, and I was really focused on our core services that we had really been delivering up until that point. And so I got back in, and I've actually been back in ever since. And it really took about 6 to 9 months to like reset the offer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in the meantime, I was selling different things at different prices and was, getting creative to continue to bring revenue in until I was able to really dial back into, okay, who is our new customer? What is the right price? What is the right offer? What options should we provide that will meet the market demands? Um, and now I'm kind of getting back to the phase where things are starting to get repeatable again.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm here, I am starting to think, for 2025, does it make sense to reintegrate another person to come in and help support sales? But I just need a little more time to validate that we are back to a repeatable process. If you don't have that, you can't expect a seller to figure that out for you. It's just not how it works. That's why there's so many horror stories of people hiring heads of sales or trying to transition founder led sales. But anyway, that's kind of that was the arc of
Mm-hmm.
what we went through and how we had to navigate that.
Yeah, there's so many different takeaways in that. And the biggest one that I get out of it is you see this, especially as organizations grow. You hand off different processes to people. You've been out of it for a year or a certain amount of time, and the market changes. But if you're not as involved in it, the default is to blame the sales team, to blame the biz dev strategy, to blame something like that. When the reality is, no, you don't recognize like the market may have shifted, macroeconomic conditions may have shifted, like your entire offer just might not be relevant anymore. So if you're too far removed from that, you're going to blame the wrong thing. So what I love about what you did within that, and this is like Matt to this day still takes sales calls because he likes to have his finger on the pulse of like, what's the market need? What are they feeling? What's the sentiment? Things that you can't pick up really from a gong conversation per se, if you just listen to little summaries here and there or social posts, anything like that. But by being within those, you can quickly shift the overall strategy and recognize it's not the team's fault most of the time, but it's like, what do we need to do to have the right package, to target the right people, to move, to just on the fly versus waiting before it's way too late. And then you're digging yourself out of a hole, which hopefully it's not too deep by the time that you come to that recognition.
Yep, absolutely. Well said.
So, yeah, that's a tough one. So as we get to we're starting to wrap up this, but I know so you said you're still in the thick of it with some of the sales. You're starting to pull out, so to speak. But I would say, like, what do you enjoy about being in the weeds of some of this? What are some of the different things that you get to learn and help the company with? And then I'll call them, what are some of the necessary evils of it where you just have to roll up your sleeves, get things done in order to do it for the company to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really funny because we talked about this at the beginning of the conversation. My whole career has been on the front lines with sales and customers. Like my whole belief is, and I think I've shared this with you especially when you were here at Refine Labs, like when you think about business, my formula, my view is people success is customer success is company success. It starts with your team, then you need great customers. If you don't have those two things, you do not have a business. And so for me, I actually really enjoy the people and the customer components of running a business. In my belief, it is the business. That is what business is. And so I actually I like doing sales calls, and it's fun to close deals, and I like I even get into the weeds with our delivery team to hand customers off successfully, or if things get escalated and we need to kind of revisit things. So I do enjoy that part. I feel like I do feel like I'm doing what matters and what a CEO or a senior leader should be focused on. So I actually enjoy most of it, to be honest. I think my biggest challenge, though, is all of those things are incredibly time consuming. And so it makes it really difficult to balance the time that you're spending in the business versus time being spent on the business. As the most senior leader, it really is your responsibility to be looking ahead, planning ahead, having time to really think through strategy adjustments, different priorities that are going to be important as you move through the different stages of growing your business. And so I would say, that really becomes the hardest part for me, is how am I, doing what needs to be done today, but how am I also making sure that I'm thinking 6, 12, 18 months ahead, to keep us moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it means that, maybe certain things, even if I technically enjoy it or I'm good at it, really needing to know, where am I adding the most value and where do I need to really delegate more, so that I'm balancing those two priorities most effectively. But I had someone ask me that the other day. They were like, actually, someone that I talked to in 2020, they're like, I can't believe you're still doing sales calls. This is awesome. Like, I talked to you 4 years ago. And I'm like, yep, still here. And like, oh, I thought you'd be doing other things now. I'm like, nope, I'm here. I enjoy it. I like it. Like, let's get into it. So yeah, it's funny. So I think I wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing if I didn't actually genuinely enjoy
Mm-hmm.
the work. So I don't think I'd like hate parts of it, or it's like I think the necessary evil is like, how do you do just the right amount? And then delegate and empower the rest to other people
Yeah.
on the team, so that you're balancing your priorities properly
Mm-hmm.
as a CEO.
Yeah. And that balance is going to be different by every CEO based on their strengths, based on what they need to be involved in. So
Yeah,
love that
totally.
point. All right. Well, this has been fun. Founder-led marketing, founder-led sales, all of this stuff. As we wrap, any last second parting thoughts or places that you'd recommend people go along to give you a follow and learn more about what you're up to and what you're sharing?
Yeah, I think what I'll say in closing as well is, when you think about the concepts that we talked about today, um, getting good at founder led marketing or founder led sales is literally going to help you no matter what you do in your career. Whether you run a recruiting agency, whether you're an in house B2B marketer, whether you work in a different industry. So I would also like encourage people to zoom out a little bit. Like, this isn't just for doing what's in front of you right now. There's so many other benefits to honing these skills, putting yourself out there, building a reputation that can serve you in so many different ways that you're not even thinking about today in the future. So, like, play the long game with this. There's a lot of reasons to integrate these types of strategies and tactics into your day to day. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. It's the only social media platform I'm on, and you can check out Refine Labs at refinelabs.com.
Still waiting for the Instagram when you share all your chef's cooking and everything you're up to in the
Yeah,
kitchen, because I know you're so good at that. Someday, maybe a food blog.
someday.
Oh, yeah. Well, Megan, truly appreciate you joining to come on the show and share your expertise with this. I know this is an area that so many recruiters are struggling with and want to improve. So hearing your stories, especially how you went about them, how you navigated them, is beyond helpful. So looking forward to hearing how recruiters are able to incorporate this moving forward. All right. Well, As we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you love this episode, but you're not sure where to go next, we've got a link to a similar one in the show notes of the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform. And we also have full video episodes available on YouTube. So if you ever have questions, send them to us. podcast@loxo.co. Megan's on LinkedIn, like she said. I'm on LinkedIn. And if you love this episode, make sure you leave us a quick rating in your podcast streaming platform. It takes 3 seconds, but it's going to help other recruiters like you find us. So everyone, that's the show. Megan, thank you again for joining us. I absolutely love this conversation. So until next time, bye y'all.